Hello YouTube, my name is Shane, and what I'm here to say isn't that important. But listen, I have something I want to talk about. If you see me on here before, it's not flat earth. I'm done with that. But instead I would rather talk about some serious current issues in the world today. But one that's really overlooked, often under-discussed, and some people would probably not even think of it as a problem because their world doesn't have to worry about this kind of thing. Which is interesting because most of our laws and most of our rules play to the lowest common denominator when you break it all down. Like any law that allows us to prosecute somebody for hurting somebody allows people to also prosecute for almost hurting somebody, reckless endangerment, because you're acting in such a way as to potentially hurt somebody. And it's a fine line, and that's open to interpretation. But one might consider excessive speed through excuse me. One might consider excessive speed through town a reckless endangerment. And while I wouldn't tend to argue with that, I'd have to ask what that means exactly. Because you never know, right? Everything is situational. But safe to say, certain circumstances are easily fitting into that category without a lot of scrutiny. But there's a few that come around and that can be huge to somebody, even though to most people, probably not that big of a deal. And it actually leads to kind of the theme of this whole talk is being poor makes you a criminal. Now, I don't mean that because poor people are criminals because they're poor and they have to go out and steal and all that stuff to get by. Plenty of people are poor and are very honest and they're not making their living being shady. That's not what I mean. What I mean is that being poor can lead you to becoming a criminal without even trying. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. I'm going to use me as an example of this. Not ever having a lot of money in my life, I'm always kind of living on the edge. Now, personal responsibility disclaimer. I am of the ilk that believes in personal responsibility. I've made a lot of the choices that I've made, and I'm in the situation I'm in because of those choices, and I accept that. So I don't complain too much about the idea that if I get pulled over that I can't pay for it. But I will say this: everybody speeds occasionally, and when I say everybody, I'm talking 98% of the people, because there are people out there. Well, actually, if you ask me on any given day while I'm driving, I'll tell you nobody goes the speed limit. They all go under. But I mean, everybody at some point in their day goes faster than the posted speed limit sign. And by how much, who knows? 5, 10 miles over. I mean, 5 to 10 is your standard, I've noticed. Could be more. If you're me, I do tend to speed a little faster than that. But, for the most part, I try to go with the flow of traffic. Well, in the event that I get caught speeding and I go 6 over and a cop pulls me over, they're going to give me a ticket. Now, is that ticket justified? Maybe it is. Maybe it's justified. But what happens then? It can be a snowball effect and turn you into a criminal this way. If for some reason something comes up, you gotta have a car repair now, and your ticket comes and goes and you can't pay it, and you don't have anybody to borrow money from. And so you fix your car so you can keep getting to work, and then your roof starts to leak. So you have to fix that somehow. Spend money on that. And all these things that you've done, you're just making choices. And sometimes the choices that you make are sort of limited, so you end up with kind of a beater car and maybe a substandard living situation. So you have to fix your ceiling, this is just stuff that happens. It literally does. Like, a spring a leak under your toilet, for example, and now you got to clean out your crawl space and get somebody in there to extract all the waste that's been basically finding its way under your house and living under your toilet without actually going into the sewer, building up. So you have to pay for someone to come out and estimate that and suck out all the shit that went down in there, and then, clean that out and make it sanitary again. If any of that got into your drywall, you have to make sure that there's not going to be black mold issues. So you're going to have to do some remediation, and it ain't cheap. I used to do remediation. It's not a cheap task, and it's very, it's dirty, and it's costly. So let's just say you have these costs come up, and so you have to weigh it out. Like, okay, either I let my family get sick and have these plumbing issues in my house and have a leak in my roof or whatever, or I can't get to work, I gotta fix my car or pay this ticket. You start having to make these other choices, and sometimes your choices are limited by your circumstances. So what do? You make the choice to pay the things that you know are more critical. Now your payment for your ticket has gone past the correct amount of time. And what does the court do? Well, they can actually suspend your license. Now, you could call them and ask for more time, but if the event that something comes up and you can't pay it, your license will get suspended. At that point, you can no longer drive. Now, if your job is in an area where you can't make it there without getting in a car and driving yourself there, you can't carpool, you don't have that option, the bus doesn't get you close enough to make it feasible, or maybe your job requires that you drive for your job, even if you're not driving your own vehicle. Now you can't, so you can't even work anymore. Maybe some companies will find something for you to do inside, and that might be okay if you can get to work. But if you run into a situation where your license has been suspended, and the only feasible way that you can find to support your family is to go ahead and keep going to your job in your car, you've now become a criminal. And why should I have to switch jobs if I've been in a company for a long time? Because my license got suspended. Okay? So the question then becomes, based on being a criminal because you're poor, because you really didn't have the option to pay that ticket, the question then becomes, should the law supersede your right to support your family by making you a criminal for not being able to pay for certain things, even if you've always paid your bills? And I say no. What do you think?